Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
Historical romance will be the topic on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm BJ Williams. Sabrina Jeffries will tell us about her book, A Dangerous Love. We also have Susie Beasley, Heidi Johnson, Doug Benton, Clyde Martin, and Jim Talbert. Coming up, Sabrina Jeffries.
The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It, with your host, BJ Williams.
A couple of months ago, I was at the Oklahoma Writers Federation annual conference. I was able to talk with a number of writers and other people in the literary world. One of them was Sabrina Jeffries. She writes historical romances, and I think you'll be very interested to hear what she has to say about her book, A Dangerous Love. Okay, Sabrina, what inspired you to write A Dangerous Love?
I'm a big fan of Jane Austen. I was a university professor at some point in my life, and I have a PhD in English, and always loved Austen, and loved Pride and Prejudice, you know, who doesn't? And
Right.
The whole idea of the cousin, Mr. Collins, coming, and him being really obnoxious and them not wanting to marry, that's what inspired me. I thought, what if, you know, the cousin was good looking, and after all, and the father wanted them to marry, and they still weren't interested. So that was really the impetus for that story. Of course, then it became something totally different, which is the point of inspiration, I should hope, but that was the basis for it. Of course, then my editor picked up that little phrase, and all the marketing for it said a Jane Austen-like trilogy, and I'm thinking, I think anybody who's read Jane Austen will find this a little racier, but
Well, that's part of the point, isn't it?
yes, that's true.
Well, and I noticed that certain members of your cast, shall we say, had a very great fondness for Shakespeare as
Oh,
well.
yes, yes, because
So-
I do.
Well, I was going to say, as an English professor, then you were able to bring out all sorts of things here in Jane Austen,
Yeah,
Shakespeare.
yeah, I did. Well, you know, even though it's 19th century, early 19th century, 1800s, that was, you know, mostly of what they read was classics, Shakespeare. Everybody read Shakespeare, so that was a popular thing to talk about, and I just made them real big fanatics, and that's why it's set in Stratford-upon-Avon, because I didn't want it to just be out of the blue she loved Shakespeare, but she had that connection, that personal connection, and I do think you tend to, when you live in an area, you tend to read, you know, the popular authors, and from that area you have that influence. So, but I am just a rabid Shakespeare fan. I see any production that I can. I watch all the movies that come out, every version. I saw the Leonardo DiCaprio, you know, Romeo and Juliet. I evaluate all of them. I just really love Shakespeare, so I said, I have got to put this in a book. Of course, right around the time I was writing this, Shakespeare in Love came out, and I thought, everybody's going to think that's why I did this, but c'est la vie.
Well, I think you took a somewhat different approach to it than Shakespeare.
Well, that did. Yes, it did. That's true. I loved that movie. That movie was so great. It's really great if you're a Shakespeare fan, because then you get all the jokes.
Right.
You know, my husband's sitting there going, what are you laughing about?
Right.
Oh, never mind.
Well, obviously you knew a great deal as an English professor, but I'm assuming that you had to do a little bit of research about some of the more practical details of living in the early 1800s.
To be honest, I think I learned a lot more history from being a romance writer than I ever learned in graduate school or college, for that matter, because English studies tend to expose you to the literature in a vacuum, which I think is a mistake. They don't really go into the social history. They used to, but now there's this emphasis on looking at the text as a single thing, you know, apart from its time, which I think is a mistake. And so I really, going through grad school, I didn't get a sense of the period that well, you know, the Elizabethan period. And I remember having to have somebody explain to me that the Regency was, you know, early 19th century. And now, I mean, if you meet, you know, you talk to romance readers who who read in the Regency, they'll tell you not only, you know, what the dates are, but, you know, there's the real Regency, and that's from this date to this date, and then there is the expanded you know, and they really do know these things. And when I started trying to do some early on in my career, it's better now, but early on in my career, when I would go to do research about social history, there aren't enough social histories out there. There just aren't enough of them. So I had to go to letters and diaries and all kinds of other places because there wasn't enough, you know, material to help me know what women lived like. There were plenty to tell me, you know, how many wars they fought, but not enough material about social history. Now there are a lot of more social histories, so I use a lot of those.
Well, in A Dangerous Love, you managed to even get involved a little bit in the theater, and so that was an expanded area of research, I'm assuming.
Well, and my secondary field, my primary field when I was in grad school was early British literature, early modern British literature. My secondary field was dramatic literature. So I already knew a certain amount about theater because the dramatic literature section, they do talk more about the theater as a whole, you know, what the acting techniques were, what the theater buildings were like, those sorts of things. And so I had that experience already, and I knew where to go to look. And that helped a lot. But the internet is a wonderful source now, and I could find photos of the actual theaters, descriptions of the theaters. I found Inchbald's letters, you know, just really detailed stuff you can find online, as long as you're real careful about the source and make sure they're, you know, that the sources are reliable and they're referenced. But I found stuff I could not have found 10 years ago without going to 6 libraries and ordering through interlibrary loan and spending days and days and weeks, you know. So yeah, I can find just about anything now. It's great.
Now, I understand that, of course, our main characters do manage to live happily ever after, but you left a couple of people sort of glaring at each other across the drawing room, didn't you?
That's right, I did.
And one of them actually is a former, didn't he do some smuggling or something?
Yes, he was a smuggler as a youth. He was a smuggler till he was 17, and then he's the kind of character Americans like, because pull yourself up by your bootstraps and that sort of thing, and he became a businessman and has a self-made man, and the heroine is a lady, so of course he thinks he's not good enough for her, and she has a disability, so she is a little self-conscious about that, and so the two of them spend the next book working out their insecurities, essentially,
okay, and that's
while having lots of fun.
That's called A Notorious Love, isn't it?
Right.
And when will that be out?
That's coming out in September.
Okay, so people still have time to read A Dangerous Love and
That's
get
right.
all prepped for
That's right.
A Notorious Love. Now, I understand that that's actually, there's one more after that?
Well, it was originally supposed to be a trilogy, but then the third book turned out to have a character that I can't say who it is because it gives away too much of the second, well, actually gives away too much of the third book. So there's a character who appears in the third book has necessitated a fourth book. So now it's going to be, I don't know what you call that, but 4 books. Tetralogy.
A series.
A series, yes. I think I'm stopping after that one, but.
Well, providing if your characters let you do that.
That's true. They do these things to me because it happened because the guy in the second book, in the upcoming book, Juliet's guy was not supposed to be a hero. He was supposed to be a villain, and he just would not let me make him a villain. And I actually had a conversation in the shower with this guy one day saying, "You are the villain. Stop this." No, I want to be the hero the next book. And that was it. We just argued for about 20 minutes about how, no, you cannot, but I just could not conceive of him. My mind was not going to let me do that. So, yes, I argue with my characters sometimes, but I usually lose.
Okay. I have heard that from other writers. I want to thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Remember, you can find A Dangerous Love by Sabrina Jeffries at your library and your favorite bookstore. If you would like to find out what she's up to now or what some of her other books are, you can contact her at her website, which is on your screen right now. Coming up next is Susie Beasley. I talked with her about a book that has something to do with what's happening at Midwest City. I think you'll enjoy what she has to say. Susie, what have you brought for us tonight?
Well, I've brought the book titled Tallgrass Prairie by John Matson and photography by Frank Orberly. This particular book was published in 1983 and funded by the Nature Conservancy, which is I guess you say, one of the first environmental organizations that really truly they're caretakers of the earth. They have had many projects in saving prairie, and this particular book focused on tallgrass prairie, and not just tallgrass prairie in Oklahoma, which is in Osage County, but tallgrass prairie in Kansas and Iowa and Nebraska. And what I found most fascinating about this book, the photography is just extraordinary. The colors are vibrant, they just jump out at you, and you want to just get in your car and drive to prairie and just commence with nature. So that's the main thing about this book, Tallgrass Prairie.
So if anybody wants to know something about it, I'm assuming that that the book also tells us what tallgrass prairie is,
right,
how it functions, what kind of an ecosystem it is.
Right, and the thing with that is this is a book about tallgrass prairie, but it's not a book that is just totally botany. It gives you information and about the animals, the ecosystem, their habitat, what occurs. As in nature, they have fires that are there for a reason, and after the fires, they have new growth and rebirth, and it's kind of like a cycle. And that's what I found out fascinating about it. And I think people that check the book out will find that also. It's not if you were just clearly reading, oh, this is just really about the parts of the plant and that sort of thing. So if anyone's interested in what's going on in the ecosystem in the prairie, this would be the book to find.
Okay. Now, there's another reason that you brought this book besides it being an absolutely beautiful book.
Well,
right?
I brought this book as a tie-in. Right now, the Midwest City Library is hosting In Place of Prairie. This is a group of 40 photographs done by Terry Evans of Chicago, Illinois, and this is part of a touring exhibit with the National Museum of Natural History from Washington, D.C., and the public programs for the American Library Association. And our library is very fortunate to have this particular exhibit. The photographs are really unique because some of them are in black and white. Some of them actually show prairie and buildings on prairie. Others show people that live on the prairie and how the prairie has changed and the different uses of prairie.
Okay. It's at Midwest City now through the end of September. And then it will be at the Ralph Ellison Library for October.
And then at Downtown Library in November, December. And they can call the library for more information.
Thanks very much, Susie.
Thank you, BJ.
I have a couple of books for you now. Now, this first one is something that I would not recommend sitting down and reading all in one sitting, as it has to do with Adolf Hitler. It is Ian Kershaw's Hitler, 1936-1945 Nemesis. Kershaw is the head of the Department of History at the University of Sheffield. He's written extensively on the Nazi dictatorship, and his best-selling Hitler, 1889-1936 Hubris, is the predecessor to this volume. It was an editor's choice on the New York Times, and it tells quite a bit about Hitler, how he came to be exactly what he was. But if you really want to know how Nazis happened to Germany and the world, then that's Hubris is the one you want to read. But if you want to know just how far the German people were willing to go to support and follow the Fuhrer, you really want to read this particular volume. Kershaw uses many previously unutilized sources to paint this really monumental portrait. It is probably going to be the classic biography of Hitler for some time to come, and he gives a detailed look at Hitler and his inner circle of Goebbels, Himmler, Göring, and so on, but he never lets you forget just how important the people of Germany were and how very much they were willing to support Hitler for quite a long time. And in fact, I'm going to read a little short bit from Kershaw's introduction to this book because I think it explains pretty well what Kershaw is trying to do. How Hitler could exercise the absolute power which he had been permitted to acquire, how the most mighty in the land became bound still further to a highly personalized form of rule acclaimed by millions and exceptional in a modern state, until they were unable to extricate themselves from the will of one man who was taking them unerringly down the road to destruction, and how the citizens of this modern state became complicitous in genocidal war of a character hitherto unknown to mankind, resulting in state-sponsored mass murder on a scale never previously witnessed, continent-wide devastation, and the final ruination of their own country. It is an awesome story of national as well as individual self-destruction, of the way a people and their representatives engineered their own catastrophe as part of a calamitous destruction of European civilization. Though the outcome is known, how it came about perhaps deserves consideration once more. Fascinating book, but again, you're going to want to read it in small bits and pieces. It is pretty heavy going because it's a pretty awful story. Now, this next one can be a pretty awful story as well. It's the Encyclopedia of Earthquakes and Volcanoes by David Ritchie and Alexander Gates. Now, what it is everything you ever wanted to know about earthquakes and volcanoes from the Facts on File Science Library. It's very easily accessible, has lots of illustrations. Unfortunately, all of the photographs are in black and white, but if you want to know what Pele is and what she's been up to, you look up Pele in the dictionary here, and it tells you where it's located, what it's done, and what it might expect to do in the future. The same for earthquakes. As I said, everything you wanted to know, have fun and learn something about it. Coming up next is Kids Corner. I talked with Heidi Johnson about some books for our very youngest readers. Heidi, what have you got for us tonight?
Hi, BJ. Well, the first book I brought in is called Hello School. It's called A Classroom Full of Poems. I thought it was appropriate for it being, going back to school time, and this here gives you a little bit of different perspective on the objects you find in a schoolhouse, inside a classroom. Did you know that schools get up really early and wait for the children to get there?
Really?
See, I never thought of schools in, schoolhouse in those terms, but I learned all kinds of things in this book, like scissors, that they're waiting to be used, more or less, and glue. Each item on there has like a little poem. On the glue it says, "Stick with me, says glue, with a grin, and I'll stick with you through thick and thin."
Oh my.
And this keeps up throughout the whole book. The illustrations are great. They almost look like they're plastic objects, but they are drawings, paintings, and the little poems all to do with items you'll find in a school. I think children will have a lot of fun looking at those.
And that will make them feel like they know what they're getting into.
Exactly. Don't feel so strange when they get there.
Now this is a little slice of history here.
Yeah, for those children that are learning history, about American history, it's about the Boston Tea Party. And what really attracted my eye to this one is not only is there the actual history story, so to speak, of how we came to the Boston Tea Party, how we were taxed, and people just felt like they were driven to rebel. There are also these little mice characters on the lower half of each picture that give their own version, interpretation of how things happened. And whereas the majority of them are concerned about the tea tax, he's concerned whether cheese will be taxed also.
Well, this is an important consideration if you're a mouse.
Apparently so, and he does not let you forget about it either.
Well, these are beautifully illustrated.
Very much so, and a lot of imagination has gone into creating these paintings and drawings. So I think everybody will have a lot of fun looking at those and maybe learn a little bit more about American history in the process.
Now these are both read-to books, right?
These are both read-to books,
Okay. And kids will enjoy learning about school and also learning a little bit about American history, right?
That's right.
Thank you very much, Heidi, for being with us.
You're welcome.
Heidi has been telling us about Boston Tea Party and Hello School. You can find both of these books at your library and your favorite bookstore. Here's the New York Times bestseller list. We'll start out with hardback fiction. Number 10, Fatal Voyage by Kathy Reichs. The Forgotten by Faye Kellerman. America by Stephen Kuntz. The Fourth Hand by John Irving. Any Way the Wind Blows by E. Lynn Harris. The Woman Next Door by Barbara Delinsky, Hemlock Bay by Catherine Coulter, Cane River by Lolita Tademi, Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas by James Patterson is number 2, and number 1 is Clive Cussler's Valhalla Rising. On the adult nonfiction list, number 10 is It's Not About the Bike by Lance Armstrong with Sally Jenkins, Seabiscuit by Laura Hillenbrand, Justice by Dominic Doon, Diana's Boys by Christopher Anderson, The Map That Changed the World by Simon Winchester, Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis, Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom, Ghost Soldiers by Hampton Sides, number 2 is The Wild Blue by Stephen Ambrose, and number 1 is David McCullough's John Adams. On the children's list, number 10 is The Night Before Kindergarten by Natasha Wing, The Case of the Dog Camp Mystery by Judy Katchke, Holes by Louis Sekar, The Captain Underpants Extra Crunchy Book of Fun by Dab Pilkey, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone poster book, Quidditch Through the Ages by Kenilworthy Wisp, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander, The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot, number 2 is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling, and I'll bet you can't guess number 1, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, also by J.K. Rowling. Coming up next, we have Doug Benton of the Metropolitan Library System and the Oklahoma Gazette. He'll be talking with Clyde Martin, that renowned radio opera host and actor, about a book I'm sure you'll all enjoy.
Thank you, BJ. Doug, who is Bruce Campbell?
Bruce Campbell. He has a new book out. It's called If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor.
Oh, I see.
Now, he's actually done some things that people have seen, but he's one of those guys that I think when you see him in movies, you go, yeah, that guy, I know that face. I know that face. Probably his greatest claim to fame have been 2 things he did. Early in his career, he made a trilogy of films, horror movies, the Evil Dead trilogy, which he played a character named Ash fighting zombies and monsters, and they're pretty silly. The first one was shot for like $150,000 on 16 millimeter. He and the guys that he went to high school with had been making Super 8 movies all their lives, decided they were going to try to make a horror movie. And it was one of those things that probably wouldn't have gone anywhere, but Stephen King saw it at a festival and had nice things to say about it, and actually wrote a little essay about it. And it took off from there. It managed to they scraped up enough money to blow it up to 35 millimeter and get it into a few theaters, so it made a little bit of money. And then from there, they got a little bit more to make a sequel, and a little bit more to make another sequel. And so it went from there.
Straight to video, probably.
Straight to, yeah, well, it's certainly available. The trilogy, they're cult items now, and you know, they are beloved by many people. He had a recurring role on the TV programs Hercules and Xena. He played a character, the Prince of Thieves, which was a real over-the-top Errol Flynn kind of parody. Probably the biggest mainstream movie he's ever been in was the Hudsucker Proxy, the Coen brothers satire on business in America. One of his roles, he had a small role in that, and one of his chores was helping Paul Newman run lines. Off the set. The Coen brothers were old friends of his from the early days. Joel Coen, the director of the two brothers, was an assistant editor on The Evil Dead in 16 millimeter. So he has some connections, and he had a short-lived television series called The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. Campbell did, a Western spoof kind of thing, kind of a cross between Indiana Jones and the Wild Wild West that was on for a few years. But the interesting thing about, of course, it's full of stories about these people that he's worked with, the great and near great, working dinner theater with Tommy Smothers and Play It Again, Sam.
Oh my!
Showing Tommy some of their 8mm films, and Smothers giving the guys $500 to go out and shoot some more movies. So it's a lot of fun. Campbell's he's a good companion.
Great. Well, we'll look for him and. Maybe in something that's showing at midnight somewhere.
Spider-Man. I bet he's in Spider-Man next year.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug and Clyde. Coming up next is Jim Talbert of Full Circle Bookstore here in Oklahoma City. I talked with Jim recently about some books that he highly recommends. Jim, what have you got for us tonight?
Well, you know, it's a remarkable thing that there's a very fine writing written in the historical fiction genre about the Napoleonic Wars.
Well, pretty exciting time.
Very exciting time, and because perhaps it was such an extended time, and it's a period of great fascination to people of really remarkable talents, most of them Englishmen, who have written about that period. The famous one, of course, that we're all the most fond of is Patrick O'Brian,
right,
who in his lifetime wrote 20 volumes, beginning with Master and Commander, about the adventures of his two characters that go all the way through the books, the captain and the doctor. It's layered fiction. It's levels of intense detail about sailing life and battles. At the same time, it's a fascinating study of natural history, as the doctor is a natural scientist, and the remarkable interaction between these two men through a lifetime as they age and experience. It is the best historical fiction I have ever written, and I recommend it to anyone, but particularly those who are interested in that time period.
Or anybody really who's interested in sailing.
Yes, oh, absolutely. That's true. Very. Having great success from Patrick O'Brian, then you go to the infantry and the adventures of Lieutenant Sharp, ultimately a much higher rank as you go through the series, who's the principal character of Bernard Cornwell. Like all of these, they start in India and progress through the
Peninsular Wars.
With the Peninsular War, through the wars in France, and ultimately to the Battle of Waterloo, and then beyond in each series. Bernard Cornwell particularly has a gift for battle scenes. He puts you in the experience of the battle. It is bloody and it is violent, but you experience the emotions of those engaged in the fighting. At the same time, you have a particular understanding for the way that the English army operated, and both the advantages and disadvantages of their system.
And I understand now Sharp came up out of the ranks, very unusual.
Yes, very unusual, of course, which makes the character that much more interesting.
Right, and puts him, I would imagine, in a little bit more fraught circumstances with his fellow officers.
Right.
Now you have two books here.
Well, the Times of London has declared that Alan Mallinson is the successor to Patrick O'Brian. And since he has been so designated, I wanted to be sure and call attention to his works. I've just finished reading A Close Run Thing, which is the first of two books that are available now in this country, and there will ultimately be several more by Mallinson. We've gone from the Navy to the infantry and now to the cavalry of that time period. The interesting thing about the principal character, he's the son of a vicar. He has an intense religious life. He has debates about spirituality with any number of characters that evolve through the book, while being a very successful and aggressive cavalry officer. Again, it's layered like Patrick O'Brian. The character evolves and develops as you proceed through the story. The battle scenes are remarkable in that you have the sense of the strategy of the battle because the character has that kind of a mind. And it is acknowledged that that is rare in the Army. He puts himself in the Duke of Wellington's position and thinks as the Duke thinks. And ultimately becomes associated with the Duke because of that skill.
Well, that sounds fascinating, and in a way he sounds really quintessentially English, both spiritual and a warrior.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Well, thank you very much for being with us tonight,
Thank you.
Jim. If you want to know where a library is, what kind of programs they have, what books we have in stock, if you could put them on reserve, if your reserves are ready to be picked up, check out the library at our website, www.mls.lib.ok.us, and find out what's happening at your library. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.
Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.